Hello, welcome back. It is week 149 on Out on the Line podcast. I'm Jeff with my co-host Alex. As always, Alex, how you doing this week?
You don't have to call me darling. You never even called me by my name until just now. Jeff, I'm thriving over here. How are you doing in Texas?
Doing very well. Had some rain the last couple days, so it cooled things off a little bit, which is always nice this time of year down here. Great song. We should do an episode of classic country songs.
I would love that. I thought you were going to say, let's do an entire episode of David Allan Coe. And I want to say,
no. There's probably a few reasons why we don't want to do that. And there's one very easily Googleable reason why we don't want to do that. Now, we probably can't talk about that song because you can't really talk about country without talking about Never Even Called Me by My Name.
Right.
I think there's quite a few. We could talk about like decades of country songs. You know what I mean? Like do pick different ones because I feel like that's kind of how you have to do it. You don't really get anything too bad until you hit the 2000s anyway.
That's true. Yeah. Tan lines and tailgates into tractor rap doesn't happen for a while. We're really living through like the tractor rap era.
Yeah.
What a time to be alive. Might I digress and talk about what a time to be alive? Because we're talking about country music. Country music is big in Texas, right? What are the biggest cities in Texas?
Well, you got Dallas, Houston, Austin, San Antonio,
Dallas. Yeah, they got themselves a basketball team. That basketball team is called the Dallas Mavericks. Okay, the two best players, Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic. Okay. And their names don't mean dick all of shit because, baby, let me just say, for the first time in 16 years, suck my fucking balls. Celtics are your 2023-2024 NBA champions. Motherfuckers, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. Everybody hates Boston. Everybody hates Boston sports. Well, guess what? If you're going to treat us like the villain, it's simple Nicki Minaj shit. If you're going to treat us like the villain, then what have we got to lose by being the villain? So I'm here to gloat. I'm here to do a Texas two-step all over Luka Doncic's grave. He'll be back. He'll be back. He's a great player. But he wasn't better than Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and Al Horford, whom I've loved since 2007. Get real. The Celtics are as real as it gets. What are they going to say now? To quote Jason Tatum, what are they going to say now?
They're nothing. They can't. Yeah, I'm happy for you and all Celtics fans. I guess if there was a team that I would root for, it would be the Celtics, just due to proximity of where I grew up. But I just really have never cared too much about basketball, but it was fun being in a store in Texas with a bunch of people that were in fact Dallas Mavericks fans, because a lot of people are from Texas. And it was a lot of fun hearing the whining and crying. And I would have to play up that I was a Boston Celtics fan, even though I'm not, but you can't pass up that opportunity.
No, God, no, because you've got the birthright to it. You know what I mean? Same as me. Oh, none of the calls go our way. It's like Luka Doncic. God bless his pea-picking little heart that they gave him the day off from managing a Verizon store to come play basketball. Good God. The league is stacked right now. Next season, we're going for that repeat. We can taste it. Now that we've had number one, we can taste it. And there's a target on our backs. And this is going to be where you really see the Celtics get down and greasy. And I can't wait. And maybe in a year's time, you can hear me do a similar victory lap at youtube.com/C/out on that line. I'll keep it brief, folks. We got other shit to talk about. All right. You know the damn drill. Get with the program. You don't have to call me darling, but you should call me by my name. And my name is youtube.com/C/out on that line for reactions, the single series, on the record, the podcast Out on that line. Just endless amounts of content, hours really. So come and get it. Ring a ding ding piggies at youtube.com/C/out on that line.
That was beautifully done. And I think honestly, the amount of content we have stretches into the days. my
Mm-hmm.
friend. Yeah, so you could be if you're thinking, so think of us when that deserted island question comes up and like what one thing are you going to bring? You got days worth of content with us. Name one musical artist that has days worth of content. You can't. You can
No.
only name us. So bring us along. So this week there was something. We do have an album to talk about. Charli XCX came out. We're going to talk about that, but we're going to first talk about this concert that occurred called Ken and Friends with alum of the pod Kendrick Lamar, and just about half of Los Angeles, I think, that
Jesus.
ended up coming out on that stage. But it was this so Ken and Friends, this, I don't know, like a festival type thing. It was like a Rock the Bells kind of situation where it wasn't a days long thing. It was just one night of a bunch of artists coming in and performing. Like Tyler the Creator was there. And I kind of get the sense that all the people that chose to be there were kind of choosing their side as well, in this whole Kendrick and Drake beef that we have going on over the last couple months now at this point. It to me seems like there's a lot of people that have thrown their hat in the ring on the side of Kendrick Lamar in this whole thing, including DJ Mustard, like one of the biggest producers of the moment in the last probably 5 or 6 years at least. Just pretty incredible to see someone like Dr. Dre come out there and introduce the song Not Like Us, which he then did what with, Alex?
5 time, 5 time, 5 time, 5 time. 5 times back to back. It would be one thing if you did like a Madman Sneaky Gambit and you dropped it in 5 times throughout the night. It's just like then it becomes kind of a joke, right? And not like a joke, like a great joke. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a joke at Drake's expense. And when you talk about people like drawing that line in the sand and picking sides, I ask you who could take Drake seriously at all at this point. It makes a ton of sense that like if Dr. Dre is sticking with Kendrick Lamar, he's someone to take seriously. Drake is just like stepping on rakes. They should change his name to Rake.
Yeah, I rake again. That's
You like that?
That just set in. Yeah, take your time with that one, folks. I sure did.
I suggest you let that one marinate.
Yeah. But it really yeah, playing that song 5 times, man. And not only that, like there was, so one of the small things that over the course of time is probably going to be forgotten in this whole thing, but a guy named DeMar DeRozan, who you'll be familiar with being a basketball fan,
Mm-hmm.
is most famous, I think, for being part of the Toronto Raptors, and being kind of their flagship player after why can't I think of his name? He went to the Clippers. Kawhi Leonard, after he left, came and did his little tour in Toronto after he left. And DeMar DeRozan was out on that stage with Kendrick after being somebody that was like very much associated with Toronto. And I don't know if there's a song good enough that Drake could release at this point that would at all start to even like move the scales. I feel like in the scales, like Kendrick, it's on the floor. Like it can't, like there's so much weight on it. It's on the floor. I am looking forward to any further instances of this battle, and you can be sure that you can catch them here on Out of That Line when we do see those. So, Alex, what do you say we talk about a new release from another notable Out on That Line alum, Miss Charli XCX, and her new album, Brat?
Let's get right into it. Let's smack that
Yeah.
brat.
It sounds like it could be lyrics on the album, honestly.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah. So Charli XCX, for those that are not aware, and that I think there's probably a decent amount of our listener base that maybe don't overlap with Charli XCX. But so there's a genre of music, everybody's aware of pop, and then you have this little subgenre of that called hyperpop, where things are just a little more ratcheted up, sound they're going a little more psychotic, a little more off the rails. And Charli X exists perfectly within that lane. And I think this album was highly anticipated. And there's another thing we can talk about with the release of this album, and we can get to that in a second. So Charlie's been like a very successful artist within this hyperpop category. In fact, I would say if you're going to have like the face of this sort of genre, she's got to be one of them. if not the one. She's very, very good at it. She's also very good at making like just straight up pop songs too. Like she's good at doing that as well, but she sits in the pocket in these like crazy hyper pop songs, of which there are a decent like half dozen or so on this album that are really the true representation of her. And then I honestly I got almost like Billie Eilish vibes on some of the other stuff here. And that's, I don't know if that's something that you thought of actively when you listened to it, or if you can like see what I mean when I say that, but there were definitely some slower songs here. And just I guess overall the mix of the album, like, you know, the kind of the songs that were chosen and kind of the composition of the album as a whole, um very much gave me like kind of Billie Eilish vibes, because she'll go through those like big swings of this like kind of grungy pop song to these really sweet ballads. You know, and while they aren't the same types of songs, I feel like you get that same type of swing on this album.
I would say I totally agree. I had that thought driving in here, where for me, this album splits the difference between the new Dua and the new Billie Eilish.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the new Dua Lipa, Radical Optimism, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Revolutionary Optimism, Radical Optimism,
Something like that. Yeah.
something like that. I don't fucking know. That album for like didn't go far enough for me. It was a little too
Mm-hmm.
cookie cutter pop. And then Billie Eilish, I was very bullish on, because it just did a lot of like weird creative stuff and got very interesting with the production elements and the songwriting and the approach to it. And so to me, I would say Charli XCX is making more conventional pop, conventional hyper pop.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I guess if you want to call her like the progenitor of it. The only other person I've heard who does anything comparable to this is Kim Petras or
Yeah.
Petras.
Yeah.
Um, that album, I still want to do a video about slut pop. That album, treat me like a slut. Yeah, I'm dirty, bitch. I love to fuck. What like had a great it's a great hyper pop album. It has a great sense of fun. It's gnarly. This is similar. It doesn't get quite as graphic. There's no song called Throat Goat. Oh my god, the dog just showed up and scared the
Oh,
piss out
hey
of me.
buddy. Hey buddy.
Holy shit, he scared the shit out of me. Stop. I'm doing something. Go away. I love you. I'm busy. Where was I going with this? Charli XCX. Same approach in the sense that she does it like a lot of the pop stars today talk about, like the gilded cage, fame being a curse. You know, I'm crushed with normal people problems too. And she's like, okay, well, if that's become the norm with pop singers, is you don't know how hard it is to be me, but I know how hard it is to be you because I'm just like you. She's like, what happened to the pop stars that were just going wild? What happened to Madonna? What happened to Cher? What happened to Britney Spears? What happened to pop? And so she brings it back around on this album. It's not my kind of music, full disclosure. It's going to be a kind of difficult album for me to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my thing. So I'm going to approach it from the standpoint of, what have you got to lose? You had no expectations going in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of my initial thoughts. What about you?
So I listened to this one the first time, and I think I've probably generally been more positive on Charli XCX and like this kind of music than you have. So I feel pretty good about making, you know, a pretty accurate judgment about it. And what I found is through the second and like third listen of it, what I got the sense of when I started thinking of it more of a project than it was an album, I started to enjoy it a lot more, because I think there is a kind of what really held me back on this album most of all, I think, was kind of a lack of cohesion from song to song and like instrumentation. Like it felt like things kind of put together rather than, you know, you listen to that Billie Eilish album and it's like, that's an album album. You know what I mean? And like set out to make that. And that's what she did.
For
And
better or worse, you can say the same about the Dua.
yeah, exactly. And I think and you can say the same about that Post Malone album. You know, it was just like clearly they were trying to make something with a certain viewpoint, certain vibe, that kind of thing. I don't get that sense with this album. And if that was supposed to be the case, then that's a bad thing. I don't think it was supposed to be the case, because the other albums she's made were the same deal. It was just like kind of a collection of different songs, the ones that she happened to find like the right beats that she liked and wanted to write to, whatever it might be. But it just didn't strike me as something that had like intentional thought as to how this was going to be structured. And like one song had nothing to do with another. And I think once I broke out of wanting it to have some sort of concept or some sort of through line or kind of linear point to work with, there was none of that here. And I think when you think of it as that's what they meant to do, it becomes a much more enjoyable experience because you drop that expectation that it's not and never going to meet. With this, there were definitely some songs I loved more than others. There were some that I thought were more forgettable than others for sure, but nothing I really actively hated. I think the things that I found most disappointing were those slower songs where she's like really trying to sing, because unfortunately I just don't think she has the kind of chops for that, at least not yet. And I think that's something a lot of people struggle with. She excels at the hyperpop. Like she is like grade A in a draft. She's 1A or 1B as far as like hyperpop goes and the artists in it to this day. Um, the songs like I Might Say Something Stupid, Everything Is Romantic. Like there's some songs that like really represent what she does, and then there's those songs that are a little bit slower and trying to be more of that kind of ballady thing where it's like not really hitting for me. And those were kind of weak enough to definitely, I didn't like this as much as Crash, as much as her other work. But it's, I do think a good entry into her discography. Like I don't think I'm going to be too bullish on it overall. It was enjoyable, but it's probably not something I'm going to go back to a lot.
I will say, I think this has high potential to go on to be my album that aged like wine by the end of
Mhm.
the year. Because with each listen, I did kind of lock into it and appreciate it more. Again, it's still not my thing. So I
Mhm.
can't sit here and be like, it was a brilliant album. Here's the thing. We hate to bring up other critics, but you look at what some people are saying, like the review it got in Pitchfork, what Fantano said about it. There are people that are like, this is genius. This is a perfect
Mhm.
10. I don't get that. I don't see that. But by no means do I think it's bad. It's
Yeah.
super well produced. It's clean as all fuck. It's a great listen on your headphones in the car. It's great driving music, workout music. It's a vibe. And I think a lot of that, what helped me lock into it, when you say once you realize there was a concept, no concept, it kind of dissolved all expectations. When I locked into like, oh, these kind of become a mantra, like I'm your number one, I'm your number one.
Mhm.
And she just like keeps hammering you with it.
That song's a banger.
It hooks you.
Yeah.
It does. It hooks you. You're like, this is great partying music. This is great driving music. This is great workout music. It's nothing I would buy on vinyl and sit and put my cans on and be like,
Mhm.
I'm gonna have a nice gentle evening at home with Brat.
Yeah, really, I think overall to me, I thought it was, like I said, a good entry into her discography. I think I've liked some other stuff more, but I feel like she's just still refining her sound because she's only really been popular on her own and not just as like a collaborating artist for probably, I would say, the last like 7-8 years, which, you maybe have 3 album cycles you can do in that period of time. Most artists that are popular are going to release several more albums than that. So I feel like hopefully this is kind of her just getting warmed up, kind of like what we're seeing with Billie Eilish, because I think they can occupy similar spaces in their kind of specific genres. I think they're probably not really competitors, as far as I feel like Charli XCX probably gets more competition from like K-pop than she does from anything this side of the ocean. But I think it's worth listening to. If you already like Charli XCX, it's definitely worth listening to this album, and you're probably going to like it a lot. I think I'd suggest other albums by her if I was trying to get somebody into them. Like Crash would probably be the one. But I think overall, for me, I'm going to say stream it on this one.
Okay, I would buy that. I'll also say stream it. I I struggle with this. I struggle with BB Rexa. I struggle with Dua after that last album. I got to be
Mhm.
honest. Like And it's not even me being like hungry for something I've never heard before, for total reinvention. It's just like the baseline for me. I think I've realized it's no disrespect. They do it very well. I don't think it's probably a crazy thing for me to call Taylor Swift creatively bankrupt, but I think Taylor Swift is creatively bankrupt. I have to listen to that fucking tortured poets department. It's going to be the tortured podcaster department. I said I would do it. I'm going to do it. I'm not going to drag you into it. And I'm dreading it, dude. I'm dreading it. And I need to go into it with an open mind. But even Swifties were like, this album felt like a fucking crock.
Yeah.
So it's probably wild to call someone as prolific and successful as Taylor Swift creatively bankrupt, but I hate her shit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't hate Charli XCX. I don't hate BB Rex. I don't hate Dua Lipa. It's just, I can almost give someone like Lana Del Rey a little bit more credit because it's a spin on pop that is not everyone is doing. There's a lot of people aping Lana Del Rey now, which makes her seem lame by comparison. But I remember some of the early stuff. I was like, that's not half bad. And then it just kind of went down a weird path. So I struggle with these like mainstream pop juggernauts just not really giving me anything to
Mm-hmm.
sink my teeth into, and not like I need it to be new. Like I said, if you can make a straight up pop song like Billie Eilish did with Birds of a Feather,
Mm-hmm.
if you can pull that off, I'm all ears. It doesn't reinvent the wheel, but there's just something. I hate to be an old man yells at cloud about the radio and using the radio as a bellwether, but if it's something that if I listen to the radio, I heard all the time on the radio, generally I know that wasn't made for me.
Mm-hmm.
That was made, yeah, that was not made for me. This album doesn't necessarily fall into that. It's definitely more like early 2000s house, Europop,
Mm-hmm.
dance music, electronic. I think it's really successful at what it's doing. It has the misfortune of not being a genre that I'm that into. So therefore, I will call it a good album, and I will say stream it.
I think that's totally fair. And what a great segue since you brought up Taylor Swift, because this brings me to the point that I kind of alluded to when we first started talking about the album. So this album came out a couple weeks ago. Just so happened that Taylor Swift released more variants of the new Poets Society album.
God, she's got more variants than
Yeah.
COVID.
So essentially, like preventing, it was clearly an attempt to prevent Charli XCX from debuting at number one by just having more albums sold. So now we're up to something like in the 50s for variants to that album. And it's just wild to me that there's still so many people that are diehard fans of hers when there are so many examples of her behavior, and it especially to other female artists, where she puts this like hat on where she says, oh, women have to stand up for women and all this stuff. And like the only people you hear about her not getting along with, one guy is Kanye and I guess Scooter Braun, but that's not really an artist. But the other than that, it's all women that she's feuded with. All of them. And it's just insane to me that she clearly tries to like hurt people's careers for no reason. Like there's no reason to have that many variants. And whether it's her team or her, like at this point, she knows it's happening and she has the power to say, no, stop doing that. But I have a feeling she's about to do that to Sabrina Carpenter, who's supposedly like her little buddy these days because she had the feud with Olivia Rodrigo. You know, it's just like crazy to me the lengths she's willing to go to just like stay on top. It's just like capitalism as music now with her.
Okay, yes, capitalism is music is Taylor Swift 100%. That's the best way I've ever heard it put. She's oh god, she's just so insufferable. The whole situation is so insufferable. And the fact that like that makes you an asshole for being like she just makes gobs of money off of people and we're supposed to act like that makes her better than us. Hey, no, she's done a lot for people. One of her fans was suffocating at a concert in Rio de Janeiro and she asked them to bring her a fucking Dixie cup full of water like you get at the dentist. She's a fucking hero. We should carry her around like Peter Gabriel. I don't fucking think so. That dog won't hunt with me. I hate to be one of those like angry anti-Taylor Swift bros, but the more you're like, I'm not going to be that guy, and the more you're exposed to it, the harder and harder it gets. I've been radicalized against Taylor
Mhm.
Swift. It didn't
Mhm.
take much.
Yeah, it's just it sucks to see too, because an artist like Charlie XCX deserves to be huge. And not saying she's not. I mean, she's a worldwide well-known pop star. But just think about like what a number one Billboard debut can feel like and can do for your career, even if you're already massive like she is. Think about what something like, Olivia Rodrigo would. There's so many interviews you can pull up of her worshiping Taylor Swift, like worshiping her. And then all of a sudden Taylor Swift slaps her with a lawsuit to get songwriting credit on one of her songs on the first album. And it's just insane to me that she keeps doing this stuff and people still keep buying her tickets, buying her albums. Like it's wild to me that she's the only one that seems to be able to sell out stadiums these days. Like that's crazy.
Yeah, it feels like a cash grab.
Yeah.
And I will say one more thing about Charli XCX that occurred to me while we were having this conversation, and I feel bad saying this, but we've spent more time on this episode talking about Taylor Swift than Charli XCX. That, I think, is the problem to me. If people thought it was a genius album, which a lot of people seem to, I'm like, I don't fucking get that at all.
Mm-hmm.
You're entitled to that opinion because I can't tell you it's bad. It was not interesting to me. And you can be like, well, then why'd you do it for the show? It's like, well, when we pick something, we don't know it's going to turn out that way.
Yeah.
And we've picked the album. We've
And
listened
we'd
to it
rather
a bunch
it
of
doesn't.
times. Yeah, we want to love
Yeah.
every album on the show. And we went into this thinking it would be interesting. Unfortunately, sometimes as plans will go astray. We're not going to not do the episode. We put the effort into listening to the album. So if you think it's a shitty opinion or a non-opinion, we gave you plenty of Taylor Swift fare. We gave you plenty of Kendrick Lamar fare. We gave you some Celtics bits. Well, there was even some ECW in there. I don't know what else you people want at this point. Okay. With all due respect to Charli XCX, talented person, top-notch stuff, Vic. We love it. But this is just the world we live in, and you guys need to get used to it.
Yeah. So I think unless you have any other thoughts, I think we've expressed ourselves quite a lot on this episode.
Yeah.
Well, folks, until next time.